Chiefs pass rush needs impact at the edge. Who's bringing that in 2024 today? I'm Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, Chiefs Kingdom. This is Locked On Chiefs. We're brought to you today by Gametime. You can get last-minute tickets for a huge discount. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code Locked On NFL. It's going to get you $20 right off the top on your first purchase. Terms do apply, but that's what we're at today. This is going to be fun. One of the premier positions in football, getting after the quarterback. Something that the Chiefs did better last year than the year before, but they have to continue to improve, and they have to make sure that they have the horses available. We're going to break it down today for you like we do every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. Make sure you like and subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that bell for the notifications and get us over on Spotify, Apple Music, and anywhere you get free audio. You can get us 5 days a week plus. If you want that much more, you can get on the text line at 816-357-8781. We very much appreciate it. This is Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner, breaking it all down for you. Just had some cap impact content go up. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting. Also, your man over at NFL 33, taking a look at the league and RGR football. Lot to get into here today. The depth is going to be a concern. B.J. Thompson is not going to be, at least right now, on this roster and able to contribute. So who is the depth at edge rusher? The top three on the field, maybe four, depending on who those battles come down to. We'll cover that coming up in a little bit. But we start with the two premier impact players on very different trajectories. George Karlaftis has to continue to take a step up. He's been very good in pressure. I'll have a piece as we get into training camp about just how good that is related to the rest of his class coming up. But for me, the guy that still has to be counted on to make an impact is making an incredible recovery from his injury right now. You're not going to see him early, but when Charles Omenihu gets back, to me, he has to be the difference maker. He has to be the guy that comes in on top of what will have already been an established pass rush, particularly with Chris Jones and George Karlaftis, obviously. But on top of that, he has to be the guy that lifts it. And I think for his sake, given his age and the fact that he's coming off of an injury, he has to be able to make an impact right away to get on a roll to be ready for the postseason, where he'll make an even bigger impact and, quite frankly, either secure his future in Kansas City or get himself a bigger contract elsewhere. Those are the keys as I see them.
Yeah, and I want to take this moment to say really quick, Chris Jones is also going to play defensive end. We've already talked about him as defensive tackle, but need to throw it out there. He is going to get some snaps at defensive end. That's going to be a reality in this defense. But when you talk about Karlaftis and when you talk about Omenihu specifically, you also talk about guys that can come down inside and rush from the defensive tackle position, which is another reason to mention Chris Jones, because you're going to have those guys rotating between defensive tackle and defensive end when it comes to pass rush situations. And that's really what we're talking about, is getting after the quarterback. When you look at Karlaftis, his projection, based on what he did last year compared to what he did his first year, I think that you got to feel really good about where he's going to be year three. I think he's going to be an even better player than he was. He is continuing to work on the hand fighting. He's continuing to get better and improve as a player. And I think that that's a big push. And the nice thing is Kansas City's got him for probably at least another 3 seasons, because I can't imagine with the projection, with the way he's going right now, they're not picking up his 5th round tender here next year, which actually is going to be something that they'll have to be talking about after this season. So I do think he's here for the next 3 years, including this coming season. And I think it's going to be a positive for Kansas City. Then you look at Omenihu, and that is going to be the big question. There are a lot of videos that come out that say that he is showing that he is working his butt off trying to get back, and he's trying to get better and stronger and trying to come back and be ready for the season. I would say I'm excited. I think that he brings something to this roster that they don't have, a little bit of an extra twitch that they don't generally have on this roster otherwise. But I do think that they need to be a little cautious with it. I'm not saying that they can't play him early on in the season. I'm just saying make sure he's fully back and make sure you feel like he's not got a great chance of re-injuring that ACL, because one wrong move on that ACL and he's done for the season, and you basically are getting nothing out of him again. And that's not to say they didn't get anything out of him last year, because they did. He was very valuable to them, and they really missed him in the Super Bowl. But you have to be smart with an ACL, and you have to also realize that he's probably not going to be the same player he was last year, just coming back from an ACL. But he's pushing himself right now.
And I think that's the biggest sign. His progress to this point tells me that he's ahead of schedule, and hopefully he can avoid that 1 year lag, especially given the urgency of his situation personally, given his age. He's got to be able to get back. Contract year. Can't waste that year. You're just getting older. You got to get after it. And I think there's a mental side to trusting an ACL repair that always plays a factor. But I think other things can outweigh that. And a guy his age would rather, in my opinion, I can't speak for Charles himself, but most guys that I know would rather go full out and risk a re-injury, not by taking risks. I mean, just by using and going full throttle, than trying to hold back and be concerned, because the clock is ticking on a career as well. And I think that's really the key here. One of them has to step up. And honestly, it might be both at one phase of the season versus the other. George Karlaftis has to be the primary edge pass rusher no matter what to start the season. Yep. We're going to talk about who's going to help him out here coming up in the next segment, but he's got to be the guy. Whether it's crushing the pocket, hopefully continuing to be able to run the arc a little bit better. He made some adjustment and improvement there last year. If he can do that again, he's in great business. But he's also going to start to get double teamed. He's going to get that attention. And so what that will do is when Omenihu comes back, he's going to get singled up a little bit more, especially if he's playing with Chris Jones on that side. And they're trying to double or take away both Chris Jones and George Karlaftis. Sets him up really nicely. And if they have to pull blocking away because Omenihu comes back, I think it might unleash George later in the season.
Yeah, it definitely could. And Karlaftis, I think, is going to take advantage of that. And we're going to talk about the other guy that's going to help him out here in just a minute. But you look at what these two guys are going to be able to do together on the field, and the whole reason I mentioned Chris Jones is because you're going to have those three guys late in the season that are going to be on the field, and you're not going to know who's going to line up at defensive end or defensive tackle. They're not going to show you until the ball's getting ready to be snapped. And at that point, it changes the blocking schemes, and that changes getting after the quarterback. That changes how the offensive lines are going to have to handle them. And you're going to get in situations where either Omenihu or Karlaftis or somebody is going to have a one-on-one, because more than likely they're going to try to go double team Chris Jones wherever he is. And that's going to open things up for both of these guys.
It's part of the process. In the meantime, somebody's got to help out early in the season and be that next go-to guy. There's a couple of candidates. Who's the top three on the field? That's coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Summer's in full swing, and we're getting ready for football season. It doesn't matter whether you're trying to go to MLB right now and go see the Royals, or you're waiting on your preseason tickets, your Chiefs tickets for the regular season, or even those cold, snowy days. The best way to get it done is Game Time. It helps if you can plan. I fully admit that, but sometimes you just can't. And so last-minute deals are exactly what you're looking for, whether it's the section of the stadium that you want, whether it's the seat exactly that you want, or whether you're just looking for that last-minute super saver. You can save up to 60% on tickets last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, anything at Game Time. This is really important. I sit in one section of Arrowhead, and I really love it. It's a zone deal. And when that comes up, I try to go all in, because they give you all in pricing with no hidden fees. It takes the guesswork out of getting tickets for Arrowhead, but for baseball as well. You can get it all at Game Time. So download the Game Time app, create your account, and use our code LOCKEDONNFL. You're going to get $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply, but it's super simple. Create an account. Use our code LOCKEDONNFL, and you're going to get $20 off of your first ticket purchase. So download it today. It's last-minute tickets. It's lowest prices, and they are always guaranteed. Locked On Sports Today is the place that you can get 24/7 coverage, not of talking heads on CBS and ESPN, but of our local hosts that take care of your team every single day in depth. 24/7, whether you're working out late or getting up early. You can get it on Amazon Fire TV or right here on the YouTube platform. Go sub over to Locked On Sports today. Today is one thing. Charles Omenihu's return is somewhere out in the future. Who's listed as a starter right now opposite George Karlaftis? That's Mike Danna. And there is obviously a first-round investment from a year ago in Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who has to start making some progress. I think we saw some flashes from Felix late. My hope is that he can be a guy that mid-season review that we can actually put into the, hey, he has made an impact, into that conversation of being one of the top three Where do you think it starts right now as the season and training camp begins?
Man, I cannot wait to see what FAU is able to do in training camp. That's going to be a huge key for Kansas City and their pass rush this year. Is can he take a step forward from what he did last year? If he can, they're going to be in a great spot because you already have Mike Danna. You know what Mike Danna can bring. They signed him to a multi-year deal. I won't say a long-term deal, but a multi-year deal because he is consistent. He will give them what they need as a run defender, and he will get after the passer. He's not great, but he's good enough to get you by, especially in an early round season where you're not going to probably have a full-strength Charles Omenihu. But FAU is a huge key. If he is able to give you pass rush, if he's able to get on the field this year, that changes things because at that point, then your defensive end room becomes a lot different. You know, Mike Danna is another guy that we can throw in there with Karlaftis and with Omenihu. They can play inside, they can break down inside and play defensive tackle. You could technically have all four of your defensive ends that you're going to have as 1 through 4 on the field all at once and Chris Jones off the field. Not saying they're going to do that, but in some situations you could go to that if you really wanted to, because you have 3 guys that are interchangeable on the inside and one guy that is going to be able to give you pass rush from the outside if FAU can show that this year.
I think that's critical. To start the season, Mike Danna is likely your starter at edge opposite George Karlaftis. Due to experience, to his ability to have a knack for playing out there when he's been pressed into action as well. Do I like him a little bit better inside? Probably, but that's okay. The question is going to be, especially when it comes to week 1 through 6-ish, what can Felix do? Does he force his way onto the field in a platoon type situation? Maybe just third downs, or maybe it's more than that. Or is it more of a situational, hey, this team's down and we know they have to pass a lot. Does he get a drive here or there? Like you said, the beginning of training camp is going to give us an inkling, but I got to see progression through this training camp so that he can get on the field. If he can do that, he will be in the top 3 on the field the first 6 weeks of the season.
Well, and the other question becomes, you know, when you have a guy like FAU is not only can he get after the passer, but can he stop the run? He is a little bit smaller defensive end than the rest of them. And that's going to be something that he has to be able to do to be on the field on a regular basis. So can he be a guy that can come in on more than just pass rushing downs to try to get after the quarterback? Because there is value there, more specifically because you're going to need guys that are going to be able to take snaps away. And you'd rather have your guys that can get after the passer able to go on third down. And that means coming out on first and second at times when they're going to be running the ball more. So that's also going to be something that is going to be key. Can he set the edge at times? Can he at least be, I'm not going to say great, but can he at least be decent enough to where it's not a huge issue if teams are going to run the ball?
Agreed. And there's another aspect to it too. Like we need Felix Anudike-Uzomah to get on there and bring some of the youth, the explosiveness, a little bit more wiggle. Because when you look at the starting defensive line, yes, there's George Karlaftis, drafted in 2022, the year before Felix Anudike-Uzomah. But you look at the rest of the starting group: Chris Jones, drafted in 16; Derek Nottie, drafted in 18; Mike Danna, drafted in 20. Getting a little bit older there, whereas you have some reserves that are younger, but definitely have to get a youth movement in there. There's more than just that. And I think when it comes down to it, there's something to be said just for that energetic, youthful take. And honestly, if he's been able to get a little bit better handwork, if he's been able to change his pad a little bit more dynamically, get his pad level down, he's got enough tools there to make some noise early in this season and carve himself out a snap count.
And you also said another word in there and went a different direction with it, but he gives them wiggle that nobody else on their roster does other than maybe Omenihu. He has speed around the edge. He has the ability to do that. I'm not saying Karlaftis can't do speed at all, but he is more of a power guy. He is not a speed rusher. And Omenihu is more of a speed rusher, and Danna is more of a power guy as well. So you're sitting here in a situation where if FAU can't step forward, you really are going to be lacking at that speed pass rush until Omenihu is able to return. That's a problem.
And I was just going to say, that is a huge problem. Now, there was an option that I thought was going to fill that gap. Right now, I'm pretty doubtful about that, but there are still other options. So who else can provide some impact, some push at the defensive end spot? I want to talk about Truman Jones coming up next here in the Locked On Podcast Network. And everything's over 24/7 on Locked On Sports Today. Make sure you get subbed over there. And check out the Substack at Chiefs Corner for Chris, at mine at NFL 33, and check out RGR Football as well. I think B.J. Thompson's sudden issue in a team meeting, I don't even want to go into the physical details, but basically a heart attack that had to be revived. He's been released. He's on the road to recovery, but we don't know anything about what that projects to his playing time. If I had to pick a fifth defensive end on this roster before that incident, it would have been B.J. Thompson. Now, I don't know that they can afford to keep 6 edges. It's happened sometimes in the past. I don't see it here because I think they have to have 5 defensive tackles on the roster. And I think 10 is the max for the defensive line group as a whole. So that leaves you with a 5th guy. Malik Herring's put in some good snaps for this team, both at edge and inside. Another guy that has the versatility, tackle to end. But nobody has that first step. And if B.J. Thompson's not available, the next guy up for me is Truman Jones. And I think he has not quite as explosive a first step as B.J., but more so than you see from Malik Herring and from, honestly, Mike Danna and FAU. FAU can come around the edge, but he plays best in a wide 9. I think Truman can line up closer to the tackle and to the box overall and still get something done. Where do you stand on him? What do you see as the 5th option at the edge group?
To be clear, with B.J. Thompson, we don't know anything, and he is likely to be on the roster until final cutdown day. But I don't think he's going to be back this season. I think I think you're right on that. I don't think that he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to come back. Obviously, I would love to be wrong, and I hope that he's able to prove me wrong on that. We just don't know anything. Maybe we'll find out once training camp starts some more information about B.J. Thompson. It'll be very interesting to see if he's actually and I'm not talking on the field when they report. I'm talking, is he in the injury tent? That's going to be even bigger than, is he on the field? Because, players that aren't going to return for any time in the near future, not even going to show up at practice at all. That's just the way it works in training camp. So you look at that, and I had high hopes for B.J. Thompson, so that'd be a huge hit for them in depth. You make a great point about Truman Jones, and that's going to be the big question: is can he step in and can he be that guy? Can they trust him to be that guy? Because they have trusted Malik Herring to be that guy when they've been able to keep more than in the previous years. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to come down to who's going to win out between, I think, Truman Jones and Malik Herring, and I think that is probably true. But the other side of it that may play into that a little bit is, are either of those guys more likely to get, maybe a special team snap here or there? Is that going to play into it? I think it has to if they're looked at for special teams at all. You're going to have to look at that some. But, Truman Jones, I don't know if he shows out in preseason and he shows out in training camp and he shows out in the preseason games. I don't think that you'd risk losing him by trying to get him back on the practice squad. I think that you cut Malik Herring, and I don't think Malik Herring is going to get picked up by anybody else. Truman Jones is younger. Herring's been around for at least 4 seasons, I believe. I think this is his 4th season. And he spent his first year on injured reserve.
Right, yeah. And I think that's probably a lot of what the outside, the Chiefs stratosphere thinks. I agree with you. I think you can probably get Malik Herring to the practice squad as long as he doesn't go off in the preseason. But I do think there's a little bit more value to a guy who's a change of pace rusher versus what you have in what is a lot of power. Some bend, but not like that explosive first step like B.J. Thompson represented. And I do think that that's still important to a pass rush. The probably wild card here is Alex Gubner, who was a tryout player who got signed recently. To call him a long shot is being very, very kind, but he's also a lighter type guy. Now, I haven't say that I've seen college film from Montana of Alex Gubner. So I need training camp to get a read on him, but he is 6'2", maybe a little bit over that, and listed at 284. So if there is a lighter player that's in the mix, maybe he can make some headway there. We're going to have to see him on the field, but he is the dark horse in this group as far as I can see it.
Yeah, and whether or not he's able to actually do that, that'd be a huge step up for him in progress. I would think that he is going to be a guy that if they want to keep him around, he's going to be a practice squad guy in 2024 and maybe has a chance at the roster in 2025 or 2026. Because you're going to have, Omenihu's not under contract after this year. So if he's somewhere else, you're going to have a spot open. Who knows what's going to happen with BJ Thompson? We still don't have any idea, like we talked about earlier. And like you said about Herring, I think he's on his last year. And you're in a situation where you're going to have some turnover at that position eventually. So I do think you're going to have to play in for that. But you have to get a guy that's going to be able to step in and play the professional, a defensive end. And coming from a program like that, that's going to be asking a lot. Not saying it can't happen. There are lots of players that come from small schools that end up making it, and maybe he's the next one. But it does seem like right now it's a long shot.
Let's hope that he is the next one. We'll see what happens. Folks, who makes the impact at edge that isn't named George Karlaftis? We know George is going to be out there. I'm interested to see your opinions. Leave your comments here on YouTube, down in the comment section below. Leave the reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, Apple Music these days. And if you would, throw a 5-star up there for us. You know, we haven't been asking for reviews much lately, and it has slowed down. So I'd like to refresh some of those if you'd like to put it out there. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell here on YouTube and subscribe on those platforms. Plus the text line for anything breaking as we find out news, 816-357-8781. We appreciate you being with us. This is a long, long task. We have a few more position groups coming up for you. Might hear the name Travis Kelce coming up here rather shortly. So make sure you're subscribed so you're here with us every single day as we work through our prep leading up to our 53-man projections before training camp, as it's about to get ready and get going real quick. Thanks for spending your time with us today. We very much appreciate it. We will be back with you tomorrow and the next day, and we're getting ready for camp. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.